In the last two sessions, I spoke about prophecy in the Old Testament, and in the previous one, prophecy in the New Testament. In this session, I'm going to wrap up this portion on prophecy by just giving you some basic pointers that I hope can give you kind of the next steps on helping you get a little bit more out of the prophetic portions of the Bible. In just a few minutes, I really have to take this at a very surface level. So these are simplistic ideas, but if you take them to heart and do a little bit of homework on your part, I believe that you'll get a little bit more out of prophecy in the Old and New Testaments. I think the first is to understand the prophet. Who was this prophet? What were the times and circumstances in which this prophet lived? And so I suggest that you get yourself a good study Bible or a Bible dictionary. Don't always rely with everything that's on the internet. It's always going to be generally at a much lower level of scholastic achievement. Some of it is useful stuff. But I think if you're watching this, I believe that you want to go a little deeper, a little further, and put down deeper roots. And so get yourself some good resources and start to do some study on the individual prophets. Who was this prophet? When were they born? What were the circumstances happening around about them? Not just in terms of Judah or Israel or whatever, but also in terms of the nations around them. Because a lot of the prophecies are set in times when God is sending in other nations as instruments of judgment. And so it's helpful to understand, who were the Syrians? Who were the Persians? Who were the Babylonians? What was going on in Egypt during various periods of history? Yeah, that's a little bit of homework, but if you want to get a little bit more into the prophets, you really need to analyze the circumstances of the prophets, who they were, and of their lives and their times. That's number one. Number two, I think that it's helpful to read a little bit of history. Just what was the Roman Empire? Who were the Herods? The Caesars during the time of Jesus? Who was Nebuchadnezzar, and so on. Just try and find a little bit more, broaden your understanding that the history that's described for us in the Bible is not all there is to history. There is more to history. Another suggestion, I think, is to try and step back from prophecy and really try and discover what is the main idea in this prophet's message. That can be quite a task, but give it a go. What is the big main idea? I think try and understand the kind of different things that you're reading, the styles that prophets used, rhetorical questions, allegory, symbolism, and so forth. If you don't understand what those are, get yourself a dictionary and try and study what those words mean, styles of literature. Try and understand the role the prophet plays in the nation of Israel at that time. What is his or her role? And also, what is the role of the prophet and the prophecy in the early church? I think that if you take those steps, you're going to find yourself able to dig a little deeper into prophecy. Remember that some of the prophets would move into future, end time, other world, other dimensional language. And so while it's interesting to record it or try to work out the dimensions of the great city that comes in the prophet's imagination, bear in mind that prophecy is sometimes worded in the language of imagination. And can we tell the difference between a prophecy that says this concrete and tangible and measurable thing is going to happen versus this futuristic thing that no man can essentially measure, and that the prophets were caught up in and trying to describe in limited three-dimensional terms that which is limitless and is beyond our three dimensions? I pray that as you get to grips with prophecy and you try to understand a little bit beyond the nuts and the bolts of this prophecy and this word and that word, but stand back from it and understand the heart of God in prophecy, the purposes of God in prophecy, and what kind of response God wants from us in terms of prophecy.